Hi, this is Dan. This is the Napkin Academy. This lesson is drawing the 5 shapes: square, circle, line, triangle, blob. So let's practice first of all with our shapes. And let's just start with our famous square. Everybody draw a square. What are some things that we can draw with squares? Well, I think one thing that I do all the time is if I want to draw a city, I want to give someone the impression that, I'm drawing New York City, all I have to do is draw a whole bunch of squares, and what do you know? Voila, I've got Manhattan, and there's the Statue of Liberty out there. And here is, if I want to be clever about it, I add in a triangle and say here's the new Freedom Tower coming in right there. So that's one thing that squares can do. The other thing that squares are really good at, especially if we add some arrows to them, is squares are an ideal tool for showing progress. This is the type of drawing we're going to do lots and lots of times as we start to think about, well, if I'm here and I want to end up over here, how would I do it? Well, square number 1, square number 2, square number 3, square number 4, connected by arrows. So there's some of the things that I can do with squares. Let's think for a moment about some of the things I can do with my next shape, circles. Let's just give ourselves a couple of practice circles just to warm up. We've been drawing a lot of squares for a moment. Let's loosen up by drawing some circles and maybe some ovals. So one of the things that we could draw with circles, I'm thinking, what's something, well, this inspires me, some of these circles up here. How about if we draw a bicycle? So we draw 2 wheels. And let's continue to use our circles. Let's use parts of circles. We don't have to draw the whole circle. Here we go. We can draw parts of circles. And what do you know? Before long, out of nothing but circles, we've got a bicycle. Well, that's interesting. So there's something we can draw with circles. Of course, also with circles. Well, a couple of dots there. We can draw someone on our bicycle, mostly just with pieces of circles. Yes, to be fair, some of them are lines, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to combine these little shapes to make different things. So there we've got someone on a bicycle. Another tool, another drawing we're going to do a lot that involves circles is snowmen. I don't know how many snowmen we're going to draw, but if we want to draw a snowman, we can draw that with circles. And using a similar kind of style, circles are going to allow us to draw lots of Venn diagrams, things that show the overlap of ideas, all done just with circles. Let's do a little bit of practice for a moment with our friend the triangle. And we are going to put all this together in a few moments and see how we can start to draw anything. What can we do with triangles? Well, I'm thinking, well, what would happen? I wonder if we can make a castle out of triangles. Let's try to make a castle out of triangles. I'm not sure if this is going to look too much like a castle. Oh, this definitely looks like the evil wizard's castle. We can give it some pennants on top. Oh, maybe. I don't know. You know what that looks like? That actually looks to me like Gaudi's cathedral in Barcelona. Yeah, that must be where he got his idea, drawing a bunch of triangles. There's interesting. That's what we can do with triangles. The other thing we can do with triangles, of course, is we've already seen that triangles become the way to make arrows. Adding a triangle to a line shows us how we're going to move from one thing to another. And often triangles become a really good way, as we've already seen with boxes, if we want to be real specific about it. If we want to show direction, we can just do that with a whole series of triangles. And our last big shape, of course, was the blob. So what can we draw with blobs? Well, we can draw lots of things with blobs. How about if we made a blob here, kind of a flattened blob, and we said, well, that's a lake, and I'm going to add a line to cheat to show the horizon. And then I can make another long skinny blob and say that's a river. And I'm going to put a blob up here in the sky, maybe a couple of blobby blobs, maybe another blob over here. And if I had just a circle, wow, I've got this nice landscape that I'm flying over. So I can do all that with blobs, and of course I can add back in Bob the Blob, who's tracking towards the lake over here. Bob's looking for a place to take a bath. Bob the Blob. So that's what we can do with blobs. So those are our 5 shapes, but where they get interesting is when we start talking about combinations. How do we combine them to draw things that are a little more complicated than any one of those shapes? So for example, I could take a square, and of course if I put a triangle on top, and I put another little square here, another little square here, I have a house. Just a combination of squares and triangles. Now here's another one. What might I find outside a house? I take a square, I put another square on top, I put 2 circles, and now I've got a car. And what might I find a little bit down the road? A square and a blob. And maybe another square and another blob. And another square and another blob. And how about this, a little square and a triangle? Let's put another one. Let's live in a lovely place, a little square and a triangle. And of course, now I've got some trees around my house and my car, and I need to take a trip. So why don't I go ahead and make a square with a point on it, a little point on the end, and another couple of points, and I've got an airplane that's going to fly me over that forest over to someone else's house. Okay, so those are combinations to show you how we can make simple pictures of things. Now, we're going to have a term for these kinds of pictures. Later on, we're going to learn that we're going to call them portraits. Yeah, you'll notice that they're not beautiful Rembrandt portraits. Portraits are what we're going to call pictures of things, and that's how we can use combinations to draw some of them. Let's try some more combinations. Now, how would we draw pictures of numbers? Not things anymore, but pictures of numbers. Well, let's go ahead and make a couple of lines. We're good at lines. Put a triangle on this side, put a triangle on this side. Uh-oh, it looks like we're going to have a coordinate system for a chart. And we add some boxes. Just add some boxes, and all of a sudden we've got a chart that shows us something really interesting about the market. Meaning things were really great a couple of quarters ago, and then we had a terrible quarter, and now things are looking up again. We don't know which way we're trending, but you know, at least the last couple of quarters things are looking a little bit better. So that's a simple combination picture to show a number, which of course we realize is what we're going to call a chart. And by no means do you need to remember what we're going to call these, because we're going to spend a lot of time later on talking about different kinds of pictures. What I want to focus on now is, again, how we can draw anything just using our basic shapes. Now let's say we weren't interested in showing how the market was doing, but we wanted to show a different kind of set of numbers, a set of numbers that showed where we were selling our product. We might now draw a pie chart and say that this is where we're selling in the US, this might be where we're selling, how much we're selling in Asia, this might be how much we're selling in Europe, this might be how much we're selling in South America, and this of course is how much we're selling in Australia. Boy, we're selling a lot in Australia. Now we can also use our combinations to draw pictures of places. Now, what good does a picture of a place do for us? Well, it tells us locations, which tell us where to go. So let's say, for example, that with a square and a triangle, I've got my house, and I can draw some lines. Actually, they're squares where I'm just not completing all of the squares, aren't they? They're just lines. And let's say over here is the pool. Nice round pool. And over here I want to draw a triangle. What would be a good reason to draw a triangle? Well, it's a pyramid, of course. It's a pyramid. So I'm either living in Cairo or I'm living at, let's say I'm living in Las Vegas. There's lots of pyramids in Las Vegas. So I'm living in Vegas. Here's my map of Vegas. And if I'm living in Vegas, oh, I need another pyramid over there, don't I, too? Because here is the the fake little Eiffel Tower that they've got there. That's a triangle, of course, with a circle cut out the bottom. And what I want to do is I want to know, how can I get from my house to the pool? Well, I leave my house, I come to the strip, I turn, well, left if I'm leaving my house. Do I take the first left or the first right? Nope, not when I want to get to the pool. I continue on, I take the second right. That gets me right to the pool. So we have a name for those kinds of pictures, pictures that show places and locations, and we are going to call those maps. And as you can see, maps are just made out of the same combinations of the same 5 basic shapes that we've been talking about all along. Let's do another one. What if I want to draw a picture, a picture of time? How would I draw a picture of time? Really what I want to show is a picture of events, things happening in sequence. Well, we've already seen this a little bit. All I need to do is take my square and combine it with a triangle. Let's make it simpler. These take practice. I can draw them fast, but if you practice along, you'll see that with a square and a triangle, it's pretty easy to make a process that says A, then B, then C. Just a combination again of a square and a triangle. And let's try one more type of picture that would be useful to draw from a combination. And these would be pictures of process, how things work. How does something happen? And we're going to come up with a name for these too. So let's say that I've got a square over here. And actually, that's not just a square, that's a bucket. And it's got a bucket of water. And that's important because over here is a house. And with some pointy blobs, that house is on fire. Now, if I put that water on that house, I'm going to save the house. It's going to be a little bit steamy, but I'll save the house. But if I just dump the water out and I end up with an empty box and a puddle of water over here, what's going to happen to that house? Well, it's going to end up as a bunch of lines and more steam. So what we call there, but that type of picture, again, combination of our squares and our triangles and a couple of blobs and a couple of lines, it's a picture of process, a picture of how. We're going to call those flowcharts. Flowcharts. So those pretty much summarize all of the combinations that we can come up with, and let's pull it all together with one more picture, a whole process picture. Let's say that we put together some squares and triangles, and we have a factory. And that factory manufactures, for years and years, we've been manufacturing more squares and squares with circles that are called cars. And for years and years, we've been selling those cars at a car lot. That's what we do. We manufacture cars and we sell them at a car lot. And inside our factory, if we were to look at how we do that, our assembly line, pretty straightforward. We take square number 1, we move it down the assembly line, and we add a square on top. We move it further down the assembly line, and we add those circles underneath, and then we ship that puppy out to the auto lot. But you know what's happening? Something bad has been happening lately. It turns out that the folks at the auto lot are telling us that they're not selling our cars anymore. Turns out that people don't want square cars anymore. The feedback that they're getting at the car lot is that people now want round cars. Well, we better go back to the factory and figure out, if we're going to stay in business, how we're going to make some round cars. So let's change our assembly line a little bit, and let's stay in that we now start with a circle. And look at this. Building a round car turns out to be easier. There's only 2 steps to building a round car, and then we can get that out to the lot even faster. So look at how marvelous that is. By being able to change our assembly line, we've gone from 3 steps to 2 steps. We've got a more efficient assembly line, and we've got more cars that are being sold. And look at the kind of picture we can draw just by combining our basic shapes.